Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our June 2026 Idea Jam. Thank you for being with us here at our final jam of the 2025-2026 season. My name is Stan Baines, and I will be your chair for this jam session tonight, and I'm a steering committee member of the Canadian Network for Imagination and Creativity, or CNIC for short. My fellow scenic members and friends in creativity that are with us here this evening are scattered about on your Zoom screen. So, committee, if you could give us a wave, let us know who and where you are. There we go. That's excellent. At Scenic, it's our goal to find our shared imagination and creativity and view it from the different backgrounds we come from, see things from the different angles we exist in, and to create and foster forward, open thinking dialogue. It's our hope that through these discussions that we have at each event, that we can collaborate and explore through idea sharing, expand our minds in new directions we didn't think of before, create new and long-lasting partnerships in our differences, in our sameness, and in our beliefs. Our idea jams that we host each month is our place to share with you different topics, discussions, and ideas from hosts and guests, and then have the discussions that flow with you afterwards. We want to find and foster our inner and outer creativity and do this together in our learning and listening space so we can carry forward those concepts, those discussions, and those ideas out into our worlds and into our spheres of influence. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge that as a resident of Clarence Rockland, Ontario, which sits just outside of the east end of the city of Ottawa in Ontario, Canada, I'm chairing our meeting on traditional unceded land of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people and territory. I'm thankful for this opportunity to be able to do so this evening and every time we meet. The rains of yesterday brought sorrow, sadness, and pain, but the sun that shines will bring hope, happiness, and life for tomorrow. In our idea jams, we want you to reflect and participate in the way you are most comfortable with and make this idea space your own. Our idea jam is our space to learn, explore, and share. We want to hear your ideas through conversations and in our chats. This is a place where talking your ideas out is what it's all about. Your thoughts, your inklings, and your ideas help keep our space moving forward, so this is your time to shine. Our format here is very simple. Once our hosts guide our discussions for the evening, we'll open the floor for our chats and conversations to begin and see where our journey will lead us during our time together. We do this together with respect in mind, regard for everyone's position in our conversations, and thoughtfulness in our chats. Nothing is a bad idea. Every discussion point helps move the idea along. Please take this opportunity to explore and share as your insights may be the spark that lights somebody's creativity fire. As you can see, Zoom is our platform for choice for this discussion. Zoom allows you to participate in many different ways. It has built-in controls that allow you to raise your hand so we can see you when you wish to join in the conversation. You can add things in our chat function, which helps to keep the ideas and thoughts flowing, and you can share your emotions with those little emotion reactions as well. Share your ideas your way and join in the jam. So for tonight, we are going to be led by Jessica Sokolowski. Our topic of discussion for this evening is student to brilliant designer. So let's get started, and over to you, Jessica.
Yay, thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. I really have been looking forward to this all week, and I appreciate you joining me. I'm here in my classroom. We had a great discussion before you all joined, but we're experiencing some very turbulent weather here in Carleton Place in Greater Ottawa. And my home happens to be bundled away in a little rural area where the internet is not so stable. So I thought, before I have the provocation, what better place? We're in my classroom. I'm just going to put it out there. Can you please raise your hand if you can tell me what jobs might be available to my grade 6 students in the next 10 years? What? No one? What about 20 years? What kind of jobs might be available for my students that I have right now? So the answer is we all don't know. We're currently teaching students for a future that we're not even prepared for yet. So I have two short provocations for you before we enter into a very rich discussion that I'm very much looking forward to. I have a very quick 2-minute TEDx talk by a student herself, speaking a little bit to the idea of creativity and what we really need in our schools. So if you'll bear with me, I'll very quickly get that set up for us.
My name is Defne. Today I'm going to talk about why should schools teach creativity. When we think of school, we usually imagine classrooms where subjects like math, science, or history are taught. But education shouldn't be just about memorizing facts. Because when students only memorize information, they eventually get bored and lose their motivation to learn. Think about it. Listening to a subject you don't enjoy or find boring is really difficult, right? That's exactly why creativity is so important. It makes lessons more engaging and interesting. For example, in a math class, creativity helps students become curious, problem solvers, and to open new ideas. Creativity means being able to look at problems from different angles, come up with unique ideas, and to find original solutions. It's not just a skill used in music or art. It also plays an important role in science, technology, and daily life. For example, the world's greatest invention, from light bulbs to smartphones, came creative minds who dare to think differently. But creativity doesn't always grow on its own. We need to create an environment where it can develop. Just like reading or math. Creativity is a skill that can be taught and improved. And the best place to teach this skill is at school. So, how can we teach creativity in schools? First, we should encourage students to be curious. We should give them a space to ask questions like what if or why not. Students should be given a project that don't have only one right answer. For example, a science teacher could let students design their own experiments even if they fail. Or a literature class. Students could write their own endings to a classic story. These kind of activities can help expand their thinking. When students free to express themselves and explore ideas, they become more confident and more eager to learn. A creative student isn't afraid of taking risks or share their thoughts. And those are the exact qualities that future leaders, inventors, and problem solvers need to have. In today's fast-changing world, just having knowledge isn't enough. Students must be able to think critically, adapt, and imagine the future, not just learn about the past. In today's fast-changing world, just having knowledge isn't enough. If you want to build a better world, we need to create creative minds first, and that starts in the schools. Thank you for listening.
All right. Thank you. Not to me, to the TEDx speaker. I thought that we would open with something really exciting. I would like to use a whiteboard on Canva. I've already posted the link, but in a second, I'm going to give you the link again because I would like to do a little bit of an idea share to kind of open up our session. So where these ideas all came from, I saw a TED Talk done, I believe, in 2024 by Nick Kelly, and he talked about this idea of students as brilliant designers. And it really had me thinking, not just about the way that we teach students, like in my grade six classroom, but also the way that we're preparing teachers, like at the faculty that I teach at the University of Ottawa, to become teachers to teach future generations. So let me share my screen one more time. And I'm going to open us up to a different adjacent provocation that you're going to be a part of momentarily. So here we are. Just give me a thumbs up if you can see the little window that I've opened up. Amazing. Okay, so a few small ideas that I took away from this TED Talk that I viewed was, number one, Nick Kelly was speaking to the idea that if I can teach you to read the way that I teach matters, reading is going to allow you to be part of society. And this is reading so that you're able to conform. Or I can show you that reading can give power to the world to do things that matter. This is reading as a skill for freedom rather than conformity. So the 21st century skills that were laid out in this video and in a lot of other peer-reviewed publications are the following: creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. And that's exactly what we're going to do right now. So just in case the link was lost, I'm going to repost that link for you into the chat. What I would love for you to do is invite you to click this link right here, and I'll give you just a brief tutorial on what you're able to do with this link. So once you're in, great, I can see people starting to, I see the visitors coming in, amazing. If you haven't used Canva Whiteboard before, super, super simple. I'm gonna move this up and I'm gonna move it around a little bit because I want to create space for your thoughts. So to the left in the taskbar, you're going to see some little sticky notes. If you click on the sticky note, you're able to write in your ideas. So to open up as a provocation for this session, I'm going to ask you three things, and I'll invite you to put your own sticky notes onto the Jamboard. So number one, are we preparing students for future or for our past? What skills are going to matter most when the information is available instantly through technology? So if you want to build on that conversation, again, right over here, you've got a sticky note and you can put your ideas in there. The second question is, are we creating consumers of ideas or creators of ideas? And again, here's little sticky notes to join that conversation. And the third provocation is, how might our classrooms change if curiosity became the starting point for learning? So I'll give us about 3 minutes. If you could go ahead. So again, all you need to do, if you click the sticky note, it'll bring down a taskbar. You can go ahead and select one of those, whatever color you'd like. There we go. Amazing. Add your text. You can move it around. Again, we'll have about 3 minutes, read out those ideas, and then we'll open up for conversation. Amazing. So as the stickies come up, I'll begin reading them. I can see everyone is in the whiteboard option, which is really great. I'll make it bigger so that you can see more of it. Awesome. So I'm going to start reading some of the different comments that we're getting from our participants. So I think we are definitely preparing students mostly from the rear view perspective. I cannot wait to hear more about that. And not necessarily by focusing on creativity. We are not preparing students. We need to focus on critical thinking. Amazing. Again, these are just going to be some quick ideas that are coming out just to begin, and we'll be able to open them up into more of a rich conversation from this starting point. I'm going to move this one over so I can see it. Teaching how to use reading is neither good or bad. People do self-select on their readings, which then can lead to people being drawn to prejudice, bias, and attitudes contrary to openness. I think we're creating mostly consumers of ideas as opposed to creators of ideas. Excellent. Give another few moments for people that may want to join. Again, this is just an opening to guide our conversation. But I'm loving seeing all of the text boxes appear. It's really neat and very on brand for the technological world that we're in. I think we are creating mostly consumers of ideas as opposed to creators of ideas, and are not fully emphasizing such skills as critical thinking. I'll read the few more that we have here, and then I'm going to navigate from the whiteboard so that we can open up for further dialogue on these provoking questions. Oh, I love this. Even creativity is becoming a commodity. We are still consumers, but will we move away from that? How much stuff can you really have? And I think we're creating information consumers. I have two more comments, and then we'll begin and open up our discussion for ideas from everyone else. Consumers were the past paradigm, so we need creators. We need to have students posing questions, sharing their questions, and then exploring how to proceed with solving the problems. We also need to have them becoming wise designers and not just brilliant. Amazing. Curiosity might reframe the conversation from getting the right answer to focusing on the process of learning, discovery, and exploration. So I'm going to come back because it seems like we're really starting to navigate some exciting conversations. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close. It doesn't mean you have to stop adding to it. It'll be available the entire evening, but I am just going to stop sharing so that we can open up the dialogue. So Stan, we have some really awesome ideas on our whiteboard. I'm curious if we can open up now so that we can expand on some of these ideas and build on the short video and the short ideas that we had to open the conversation.
Yeah, that's perfect. The floor is open. So for those of you that are currently engaged in writing, if you are done writing, then you are more than welcome to get your hand up so I can see you, and then maybe expand and share on your idea like Jessica was talking about, because we have a lot of ideas flowing there. Go ahead, Michael. Oh, you're muted.
There, is that better? Can you hear me? Okay. Thanks very much, Stan. And Jessica, thank you very much for the provocation. I'd like to throw in a spanner here. If we're talking about private schools, then with the cooperation of a group of parents involved in that private school, we can do whatever we want. But if we're talking about public schools and any public system, are we not also responsible politically to what the parents want of their own students, their own children in the schools, what school board trustees want in those jurisdictions where they still have trustees, or what provincial governments want? Because public education is paid for generally on the public dime. So shouldn't the public have some say in what they want students to learn? And if you ask a random group of parents what they want their students, their children to be able to do when they leave high school, creativity is not going to be at the top of the list. It's going to be something like give them some kind of qualitative edge to compete in the job market and be successful citizens so that we collectively don't have to pay for them anymore. In other words, there are very pragmatic sociological reasons to education, which is not so much to force them to conform as it is to prepare them in some way to be successful citizens, but not to be rebels, not to be outsiders. You know, being creative means you're a rebel to some extent. And there's a lot of pushback in the public education system about that. If it's a private school, then but you can do whatever you want. But how do we convince politicians and the political discourse at large of public school systems to buy into everything that we're all about collectively? And only an idiot would disagree with what Jess has so provocatively presented. But we're not the ones running the school systems. So how do we meet that divide? Because it's there, isn't it? Don't all speak at once.
Definitely will keep that one on the table. My goodness, right? Like way to add another piece to the pie. So we'll yeah. So that one's up in the air, everybody. I'm gonna go over to Fred for now.
Well, I'll probably just pick up on it because this is a wicked problem. And so,
Yeah.
carrying on from the previous time, it's communication that's so key. Um, I remember how assessment has slowed progress so greatly because it's the last thing that we think to change. But I think it's something that we have to change very early. But, right now, kids are coming home with report cards with B's on it, and the parents are excited, not knowing that that's possibly below the median mark with the rewrites, etc., and clear criteria. So, how do we communicate that? So I think that it will take a group of brilliant designers to wisely select what types of work to show, because a lot of us were raised in different paradigms and we just don't understand until it gets open for us. I teach teachers, and a lot of them need to be shaken out of their enculturated understanding of what life is like. And I can think of so many creative things where if we published in a way that it was available for people to see what the creativity is doing and how they've integrated technology and how they've drawn in different things, how they've carefully considered the implications of their solution, then other people will be going, oh, my kid's not doing that. And maybe they'll start to realize what we need to do. So thank you, Michael, for a wicked problem, but I still think assessment is grabbing us and holding us back.
Thanks, Fred.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah, agreed. Dean?
I'd like to just, I was actually commenting on Michael's stuff, but I agree with Fred in that communication is really important. One of the things I've noticed, I'll go back to Mike Harris era, wherein the government, provincial government of the time, had the right to communicate with the public, but the teachers and the teachers union did not have that right. There was all types of restrictions on what they could say to the public and how they could speak to the public. And Mike Harris came up with a slogan, which has been used so frequently since, which was, "Why are you holding our children hostage?" And it's an absolutely stupidly effective statement, because the teachers could have said it and it could have had the same weight. Why is the provincial government holding our children hostage? And it would have been able to be used. And it's one of those things where communication is extremely important. And if creativity is so important, then how do we convey that information? Talking to the parents is not enough. We need to be able to talk to the public as a whole. And it has to be a consistent flow of information over a time period, not a statement that says creativity is good, but show. And different ways. I think back to the 1960s with the number of approaches to teaching people that smoking was bad and the cartoons that were used, which was very creative. And so coming back to Michael's statement or provocation, which I don't think is a provocation, we need to, if we want people to accept more creativity within the curriculum and incorporating that. I think Fred is right. We need to teach the teachers that this is actually something that is a goal and not a distraction from education. And we need to teach the public that creativity does not mean, I'm sorry, Jessica, but talent shows at the end of a school year. So I apologize. I know it's, I got Stan laughing. So it's more than that, right? It's problem solving. It's what Jessica started with, that first question. What are the jobs for these grade 6 students in 10 years? And none of us know. The future is not ours to seize, to quote a song. So what do? Start figuring as a mass how to get that information past the gatekeepers, who would be rules, laws that state that teachers can't be talking about what's happening in the classroom, and get the teachers' unions, the associations, to spend some of their dollars, instead of just negotiating with the provincial governments, but also directly communicating their philosophies, their ideas with the public well before there's any contract negotiation, although that does seem to be constant.
Thanks, Dean. Goran.
Great points by Dean and Michael, as always. So I'll just build on that, hopefully as a yes, and thinking about Michael's question around how we might convince the school boards that creativity is important, and reflecting on Fred's comment around assessment grabbing us and holding us back, and communication as really important, and what Dean just said. It seems to me that the purpose of education historically, to Michael's great point, has been sort of interpreted through different lenses. And I always remember that mantra from about 10 or 15 years ago, when there was, this attempt to kind of shift the direction of education, where the employers and various industries were sort of kind of aligned behind the statement of hitting the ground running. And this seems to have been kind of a popular phrase at a time, where the assumption was that the future is stable enough that we can learn something, and then to your point, Fred, to kind of develop these assessments to make certain that the skills we're developing are actually aligning with what we'll need in the future, which is this wonderful provocation from Jessica from the very beginning, so that we can kind of hit this ground running, and then we'll have people that are ready for this future. And again, to Jessica's great point, I think we are witnessing a shift of paradigms. Some researchers, Kondratiev has the famous Kondratiev waves that happen, according to that theory, at least every 45 to 60 years, that are caused by emergence of major technologies. But whether we subscribe to that theory or some other, I mean, what they seem to kind of have in common are these paradigmatic shifts, and the change in paradigms changes, of course, many things, but certainly it changes the nature of the questions that we ask. So, in innovation classes, or I'm sure in your own classes, you might have reached for that famous chestnut around the innovation of the car that, wouldn't have occurred if someone asked the question about, how do I create a faster horse? A car is a totally different thing. It's a different paradigm. It's not just about accelerating what is happening already. So creating brilliant designers might have to do something with asking better questions, and then convincing, the school boards and others that this is valuable might also have something to do with imagining different futures where we can align ourselves as stakeholders and communities towards these types of futures, where asking insightful questions is actually viewed as valuable, because there might be futures where asking insightful questions is not necessarily valuable, but then we might not be interested in those types of futures. So sorry for the long response, but there was some good conversation, so I hope that makes sense.
Thanks, Goran. Last one I've got for now is Natasha.
This is one of those fascinating conversations that I love listening to some of the ideas. And, as Fred was talking about parents who are happy with B's, the kids that I tend to spend the most amount of time with, they're going home with I's. And an I means that there's insufficient work to be evaluated. So, there is more and more creativity that has to happen in the classroom, because we have kids who are not accessing any of the curriculum. And, and somebody was talking, Dean had sort of mentioned the holding kids hostage and you have to be so careful about what you say. So I've been in parent meetings, and, how do you tell a parent that their kid is literally running around the school doing absolutely zero work? And how do you, sort of try and find creative ways of engaging that student who's 5 in some cases, right? And, there are so many things that I would love to do with some of these kids to sort of get that, let's look at some of these creative things. I've got one kid who is amazing at directing. He will tell you exactly the lines to say. He will, he will dress you up in the costume that he has designed. And like, how can we have the time and space and the manpower to be able to allow some of these kids that opportunity to be creative? So there was sort of a lot of thoughts in there, but like, it's not easy to find ways, because again, the curriculum, yeah, it's not the greatest, but I mean, if we don't change some of this and become more creative, what are we teaching kids?
Dan, is it okay if I
Take back over. It's all yours.
that's amazing. Sorry, there's just been so many amazing comments. I just wanted to have two quick comments and then gear us a little bit. So, Natasha, thank you so much for that, because part of Nick Kelly's position and talk was taking a look at the idea that teachers themselves are brilliant designers. It is our responsibility and job to create. I recognize the curriculum is quite dry, but to deliver that curriculum and create spaces for students to exemplify their creativity and deliver the information in a way that they can demonstrate their learning in the ways that work best for them. So I have two different schools of thought going on in my brain. Firstly, I believe in the University of British Columbia, there is a professor named Dr. Shelley Moore. I love her. I follow her work. She speaks about the idea of teaching to the difference. So, for example, we have a lot of students now that are neurodiverse. So instead of having, a regular curriculum and then something extra, now we're teaching to the difference. And I would argue that this is so beneficial for everyone. I'll give you a quick example. Just today in my classroom, we're learning about flight. In grade 6 curriculum, flight is one of the scientific units that we do. So obviously, I gave them an overview. We spent a couple lessons talking about the different elements of flight. And then today, I wanted them to be brilliant designers. I gave them some basic ideas. We weren't using paper airplanes. We had, sticks, and we're using cardboard. I gave them a basic design for a plane that really wouldn't fly unless you had any added elements. And then there are pieces of plasticine. They had to figure out, where do you need to put the plasticine? Where do you need to put the different wings and elements of your plane for it to actually go? They spent a good hour really toying with this and getting excited about trying to figure out what they needed to do in the mechanics of this plane to make it fly. I didn't give them the answers. I gave them the elements that they need, the scientific elements, but we came from a place of problem solving. And so this is where I'd like to steer the direction. Earlier, someone had mentioned the idea of assessment. Nick Kelly talked about this, and I talk about this a lot with my teacher candidates at the university. We cannot have these amazing units or these great sort of problem solving or backwards design opportunities and then have rigid assessment. So part of the problem that we're facing at school is this assessment piece. So some of the work that I do is taking a look at, what do creative assessments look like? My students asked me today, Miss S, are we being assessed on this? I was like, of course you're being assessed on this. And the success criteria that I'm using does take a look at those 21st century skills. Are you communicating with your group? Are you collaborating? What is the critical thinking that you're using? Right? So I want to steer, I wrote myself another question down, and I'd like to steer the conversation to have a new group of conversation about what is the goal of sending children to school? Why is it? Why are children coming to school? Because I can tell you, we're no longer preparing students to go to factories, right? We're not teaching students basic literacy and basic numeracy so that they can go off to these jobs. At the beginning of the conversation, I asked you, what kinds of jobs are going to be available to my students? And you're right, the answer is we don't know. I'm just amazed at the jobs that are offered now in my own lifetime that weren't available to me when I was a student. So I want to rejig the conversation a little bit and ask you, what's the goal? Why do we send children to school? What do we want them to get out of coming here and spending all this time with us? So I'm going to be quiet so that I can open up that conversation. I'm seeing so many amazing chats. Unmute and tell us your chats because the conversations that are happening in the chat box are so awesome.
Okay, I'll unmute myself because I can't actually raise my hand. So, again, it's giving people permission to, especially right now. So I work for the Ottawa Public Board, which is, of course, under supervision. So, I mean, every dollar, every penny is being counted. So this one particular kinder student likes to take our extremely thin, horrible toilet paper that, because it's so thin, blows beautifully in the wind, and he likes to use this as Rapunzel hair. But of course, the thinking is, well, we can't let him use all the toilet paper. So instead, we got him some like crepe paper, which is probably more expensive than the toilet paper. But, just allowing that opportunity for these kids. And it's so hard for people to kind of let go of some of that assessment, to let go of that curriculum, to, sort of see the beautiful things that these kids can create when given the opportunity and the okay to waste, quote unquote, waste resources.
Natasha, I love that because I do feel that there's not enough time that is given to that creativity. I was thinking about this the other day. The opportunities when we were young to get bored, right? We didn't have technology, just as an example. And I'm not trying to go to an adjacent conversation. I promise you, I'm landing my ship. But we would come up with these amazing games. And I don't see children as much spreading that creativity and coming up with games to entertain themselves. We don't have enough time for students to be bored or just take materials and figure out, what can you do with these things. So I'm just thinking out loud here, but I'd love to hear people's thoughts on that. The idea that our children now are so overstimulated. There's so many things going on. Are we allowing enough time to sit with yourself, sit with your thoughts, be bored, use resources, come up with different ideas, celebrate, the ideas that you're having as opposed to the fact that you're not staying in line with exactly what I've prescribed for you to do. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Lindsay, go ahead.
Yeah, I worry that the voyeur culture is suppressing the be engaged, be involved part of growing up. And when kids are engaged, a lot of it is to show, to perform, or to post, or to take a photo, or whatever. It's for being viewed visually. It's not about sharing the experience in any kind of depth. And obviously, when we're very young, we don't have the kind of depth that we do when we're older. But even still, we start to develop what is depth of experience when we're young, by doing what you just said, Jessica, which is sitting with it, reflecting on it, what actually happened, how did it make me feel, what could be different when I do it again, all of those things. We're bypassing that with the kids are just so focused on being entertained and what things look like. Yeah. It's a worry.
Thanks, Lindsay. Fred?
I can think of so many examples where something was going on that had a built-in wait time to it, but at the same time, it was a matter of brainstorming and generating possible questions. And I know I've had many times where I tried to anticipate all the questions that might come up with, and found that the students in their group mind had come up with more, and some of them were the ones I wanted to solve. And so I think creating just the opportunity for kids to ask questions on a certain topic and then going with those questions, or other times creating a model like a fishbowl activity where the students are surrounding a group of people that are parsing a poem and talking about how it connected to them and how they sought meaning, and then they get to ask questions of the fishbowl participants, so that they get some modeling going and then start to do it in smaller groups. I think the more variation that we put into how we approach things and how we assess things is one of the tools that we could put to use for doing this, because we become so staid in doing things the way we've always done it that we need to be shaken up ourselves. And getting in a group like this, it shakes us up, and that's what's good.
Thanks, Fred. Sharon.
I just wanted to share the Reggio Emilia philosophy. I was blessed to be one of 60 teachers invited to watch the teaching and see the documentation. And really, it follows the interest of the student. And that creativity goes so much farther than if the teacher imposes her need, her want, what she wants to teach. And that has been something I have adopted, and I teach virtually. Now, since the pandemic, I was hired, and I've continued with the students every second Thursday from 3:45 to 5 to follow what their interests are. And then I add the components of art that relate to what their interests are. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Sharon, I really love that idea. I just want to connect with you. I as well do with my students passion projects, because if you really take a look at the curriculum for Ontario, especially something for language, it's very vague in a sense. The topics themselves are not really prescribed. The methods for teaching are not really prescribed. So if you can get students hooked on a passion project and have them lead exactly what you're saying, it's such a hit every year. They get really excited to talk about this thing that matters to them. And I can create the success criteria. You're demonstrating your learning of the subject that's passionate for you. Meanwhile, I'm able to assess the criteria that it doesn't matter what the topic is. I'm looking for a specific skill set.
Exactly. And the art elements come out. I happen to have passion to teach and to paint. So when I'm doing these art classes virtually, the students are given the opportunity to say what it is they want to teach. And I don't take more than 10 students. I give 20 classes, and everybody has 2 times that they get to say what they want to learn, and everybody learns from everybody else. So it's I start again in October 15th and I end July 23rd. And I've had a show at the Montreal TMR Library November and December. And I've been one of 3 teachers selected each month. There's 3 teachers, 1 each month, in the Eastern Township to show my work at the Library of North Hatley from the 2nd till the 28th of August. So I think what I'm saying is I'm following my passion and it works. And I'm saying it works for the students too, because I've taught elementary, I've taught high school, I've taught seniors, and I've taught preschool. So it's something that works with all ages. End of story.
Dean.
One of the things that Jessica's video said was talking a little bit about mathematics. So let me bring the sciences and math back into our discussion right now. Yes, I know you're also like math, Fred. And 1972, Carleton University in Ottawa, the psychology department, many of the professors there realized that if they were going to have an experimental program where people could conduct experiments, the students themselves could follow their curiosity, they needed the tools to be able to look at the data. And they began to actively create a senior class statistics course. And then now what's interesting is, which do you put first? Do you put the tools first, and then when the needs arise, you have the tools, or do you wait for the need to arise and then introduce the tools to them? And all of those people who wanted this program had followed the second path. They were the ones who were encouraged, motivated. They needed and wanted those tools because they were in the midst of data up to their eyeballs. And they wanted to be able to look at, is there any meaning here? And Goran and a few of you, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about, because we grew up within this framework of, oh, we have the tools, let's use it, as opposed to, I have a problem. Are there any tools? And so sometimes I think academia focuses on teaching tools before there's a problem that needs the tools.
Dean, I love that. I think all the time about the real world application. So for anything that I'm teaching in my classroom, first of all, I love teaching in the core stream because I do believe that we need to have more cross curricular. I do think it's really strange that we're still having different subjects in silos when they really come together to solve problems. But additionally, I completely agree with you that you know the way that we're having the curriculum presented, we need to have more space for this creative time. The other question I want to ask, sorry, only because I'm already unmuted.
One more
Oh,
hand.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Natasha, go ahead.
This year has really been fascinating. I don't know if anybody knows of the program Roots of Empathy. So Roots of Empathy basically has a baby, usually 3 to 4 months old, that starts in the school September, October. Every month there are different themes, and the kids watch as the baby grows throughout the year. And what has been so fascinating about this program is the program itself is 30 years old. And this year it is 30 years old. And one of the first things that we do is ask the kids how they're feeling. Well, 30 years ago, we didn't ask kids how they were feeling. So this was, like groundbreaking to ask kids, how do you feel? And now, I mean, we ask them how they feel more than anything else. But what's really interesting is the expectations of the program. So I'm teaching in a grade 5 class, and one of the worksheets that we were supposed to do was a very simple T-chart, the pros and cons of disposable diapers versus reusable diapers. Well, the classroom teacher, and again, this is grade 5, looked at that and she said, these kids can't do that because almost none of the kids, or sorry, a huge percentage of the kids have been in Canada for like less than a month. The other kids they don't have the writing skills. So even to create a poem or a nursery rhyme, she put the kids into the whole class. So I got 4 because she was able to have 4 groups where you had one person who could write, one person who had sort of enough of the language. So it's interesting to see this program that now has to basically revamp all of the work pieces, because the work that kids could do 30 years ago, there's no way they could even think about doing that. The empathy piece and all of that, yes, that's still very important. And it's been amazing to see it, but it's just interesting to see, some of these groundbreaking ideas from the program 30 years ago that are now more mainstream, but then the actual practicality sort of has gone backwards.
Over to you, Jessica.
Natasha, as you were speaking, I was thinking, one of the problems that I foresee is that fear of being wrong. I think that one of the things that is kind of not just stumbling upon the brilliant designers of students, that fear of being wrong. And there's still this high stakes idea that you always need to be right. But number two, when we're trying to fumble and put these programs together, and a lot of you have already talked about this, I think with Dean, you were talking about like what has to come first. I think we have to roll with it and just not make it up as you go, but you have to have a fear. Like you have to let go of that fear of being wrong. You need to just, get on the ground and get it moving. So if the program is not running exactly as you wanted, you can change it, right, as you're moving. So I see that we only have a few minutes left. So what's most important, I feel, when we walk away is, as a last kind of provocation, what needs to happen next? Not for students, but for us. What do we need to do as educators? What do we need to model for us being a brilliant designer in our programming so that our students can become brilliant designers? What do we need to change as educators, or what can we do better to really start integrating those 21st century skills instead of talking about them? Or you're right, I think, Dean, you were talking about having it in peer-reviewed literature. We have all these amazing things that come out that aren't necessarily happening in classrooms. So what needs to be the shift?
Sorry, can I just interject here again? So it's interesting, Jessica, you said, can't be afraid to be wrong. Well, roots of empathy is very prescriptive. You can't deviate from it. But what's also very interesting is that the teaching that they do, I've been in education for 28 years. It is so hard because it's errorless teaching. So no matter what the kid says, whether it's positive or negative, the response that I'm supposed to give is thank you. Right? Not, wow, that's really good thinking. No, because that puts a positive so that the kids feel open. So it's just, but it's so weird to just have a kid say something absolutely, insightful or absolutely ridiculous and just thank you. So it's just interesting that, this concept of errorless teaching, that me as the teacher has an issue, more of an issue with than the kids.
Goran.
I love that comment, and I just wanted to highlight something that Sharon talked about earlier, that I know that so many of you are already, incorporating as part of your teaching practice, which is this whole idea of passion. In Sharon's expose, there was this, this sharing of passion, and I somehow feel like somehow passion comes bundled with creativity, and students can feel this in some way. So this really seems to me like an underrated resource that we can bring to our environments.
Lauren, I think I was going to say, I think that that's a awesome space to kind of end on. So Stan, I was just going to say, I'm going to turn it back to you, that passion is what's going to make the change. Us coming together and having these jams, the different groups that we join, the ways that we're always looking for innovative ways to teach and become brilliant designers. I think that us demonstrating that creativity is what's going to make the creativity. Again, my final comment is when I hear, teachers say, all right, guys, I'm going to give you this very rigid assignment, but I want you to be creative. Number one, we have created, more of a playpen instead of a playground for learning. But also we haven't given them an opportunity. We didn't give them an example of what that creativity looks like. So creativity creates creativity. Thank you, Stan. I'm going to stop talking so that you can close out.
Oh, this was wonderful. As expected, we knew this was going to be a great evening. So thank you, Jessica, for that. We really do appreciate that. And what a way to go out at the end of our season. So we want you to know, of course, that Scenic is socially connected, and we are going to be actively working on uploading everything over the summertime. So check out our website at www.canadiannetworkforimaginationandcreativity.com. It is all one big word. Find us online for more information, and you can check out our bios and information to see what Scenic is all about and also some of the things that are coming up. You can also find us on YouTube too. Look for us under Canadian Network for Imagination and Creativity to see our past idea jams, roundtable discussions, and you can do this at home or out on the go on your mobile device. Another exciting piece of news that we want to announce is that we are launching a book. We are currently looking for submissions. We want and need your ideas. So our book will be about play as a catalyst for the imagination. So we're looking for ideas for submissions to compile into this book, and we are really excited about this. So if you're interested, have more questions, or definitely want to submit your idea, check your emails, as we've sent out a few, but we will be doing this again, and it's going to be a call for submissions and more information. If you don't see the emails, you can email ritoriverview@gmail.com. I'm going to post that link in the chat, so before you go, if you don't have it, just grab that. We're really excited about this, so please ask questions, email Michael, and he will be more than willing to talk to you more about it. So as we close for the evening, we want to thank you again for joining us for this past hour and making your time every third Thursday for us. We've had a really good year. Thank you for making this season of Idea Jams exciting. It just seems like we started only such a short time ago and we're already in June. Well, we find this an exciting, engaging, and learning opportunity, and we want to thank you for sharing with us. We're happy that you shared your time. We're thankful that you are helping us continue our journey of imagination and creativity. On behalf of all of us here at Scenic, thank you for your Thursday evening. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. And we look forward to seeing you again in September. Please have a wonderful and safe summer. Spend time with your family and friends. And we look forward to seeing you again in the fall. Have a great summer and a wonderful evening. And for those of you who are in schools, the countdown is on. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Don't leave. I'll post that link. There we go. The very last thing in there. So just in case you didn't get the email, that way you can actually physically